Okay, so we're back and looking at the alignment of this Mr. Carve M1 Pro. Okay, so yesterday I printed out a somewhat large series of patterns, and it's occurred to me overnight that this lens has a limited range of what it can do, and this machine is sold as being able to do 70 by 70 mil square engraving. So clearly printing something that was 100 mil, I think, let's just double check that. In fact, that was 120. That is way beyond the lens's capability, so I think we can safely ignore the outer marks here. It's still slightly out, but it gets progressively better as you go in towards the centre. So I think that was a bit of a mistake yesterday. The lens is the restriction on what this can actually achieve. So we've got to go with the 70 by 70 pattern. So today I've gone in and I've just opened up the galvanometer correction tab, and I've created a core file. You can click on new, and all these figures will. Well, let's do it from scratch. Actually, it might be easier. So I'm just going to cancel that. So we go into galvanometer correction, 9-point correction, and this comes up. Now I can't see where to adjust the area size, but I'm not too bothered about that. What we want is to change this verification to 70, and yeah, I think I clicked the reset and that brings up these figures. There we go. So if the lens and galvanometer were absolutely perfect, these would be the figures that you would get. So and this is referring to the positions of this. Now what I've done, I've gone into mark 9-point rectangle, and this is what it has printed out. Now next question is, do you know which is the which is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? That's the way it printed it, but does it correspond to number 1 here? Now on other programs I have seen an image. You can actually cycle through different images in case that has been printed around the wrong way, because clearly you don't want to be entering the correction for here into 1 if 1 is actually referring to how it's printed out down here. So we're going to go with assuming that this is the correct position, and that is number 1. And I'm just going to look at the figures. So we've got a minus 35 expected, and a plus 35 for the Y, and then you enter these the real figures with after measuring with the caliper. So minus 35 on the X would be across there, and then plus 35 on the Y would be up there. So that would be okay. Number 2, if that was 2, we will be looking, and you're always measuring to the center of everything. It's not the full width, it's from the point to the center. So if we look at X for number 2, that is 0. Well, that already is the center of these two, and then that would be a positive 35. So that is correct if we look there. So we've got 0 and then 35 up on the Y, so that's 0 and up 35. So position 3 is going to be plus 35 X and plus 35 Y. So 35, 35 is going to be there. If we look at the next one, number 4, which I think is here, obviously we're going to be negative 35 on the X, and the Y is 0 because it is already on the center of this line, so that would be correct. And then number 5 is going to be the center, so that's all zeros, as you can see. Position 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is going to be plus 35 on the X and 0 on the Y, and then 7, bottom left, that's going to be negative 35 and negative 35, so that will bring you down to there, and so on. So we've got to get the calipers and we've got to measure each one of these and hope that this is the right way round. It's probably equally out, you know, whichever way round I'm measuring it, but this, you would think that they would put a triangle to the top left indicating, you know, near position 1, you would hope. So yeah, I don't know. Now the other thing here is I've wasted this piece of paper. We could have, if we knew what size this is, and I'll just give you that size of these crosshairs. So the total size that it wants to print is 110. I don't know how to change this area size, so I think it's that it probably is 110, 120 is probably what it's supposed to be, because this isn't actually scanning out correctly at the moment. Let me just double check there. So it's actually on about 110, so you're going to need to measure 110 square on here and just print off in one corner. You probably get a couple on here at least. So my next stage is to measure every single one of these, and I'm going to enter that into the real values for the X and Y for every single one, making sure that you enter the negative numbers, you know, where required. So that's the next stage. Then we are going to save that and then load the data, and I think then you can mark a verification graphic, and I think then it will give you what we had here, and you can do some measurements of each rectangle and try and measure the size here. Let's have a look. 4.3. I wonder if they should be 5mm gaps. I don't know what this corrected 4mm means. Yeah, not sure. But anyway, let me enter all these figures, and as soon as I've done that, I think I'll probably come back and show you it being saved and then loaded back in again, and then we'll do a test, another one of those on another piece of paper that we're running out of pretty quickly, and see if that has made any difference, and if so, has it corrected it in the correct areas. The other thing we might need to do is, if we're not happy with a basic 3x3 correction, we might have to change to the 5x5 just to get more calibration, you know, more squares to calibrate and measure. That would be even more accurate. But let's try this first. Let's see if we are heading in the right direction, and we really do need to know whether these are starting at 1 here. So back in a minute. Okay, so back again. I have entered all of the numbers measured with the calipers. They're quite substantially out compared to the expected 35 and plus 35, sorry, minus and negative 35, giving us the overall 70. So I think we now need to save that, saved successfully. Well, I don't know where it saved it. It says c.core. It looks like it saved it into the BSL app simple folder. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go down and have a look at that folder. It's going to come up one, and then we'll go back into it and we'll see if we can see that. Yeah, where was it? I saw it, there we go. c.core. That is where that data has been stored. So hopefully we've saved that. We perhaps can mark the verification graphic now and see if that measures correctly. So let's power up this machine. Better that way, I think. Okay, so if we hit mark verification graphic, will that print out what we want? Let's have a look. What the hell is that? Well, it's a very pretty Gaussian pattern, but I don't think it's right. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, really pretty pattern and another piece of paper bucket. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Well, that's not correct then, is it? So, brilliant. Back to the drawing board. So I've just printed that was the first one. I've just printed another one, and it's got exactly the same errors as the first one. As far as I can see, it is still bowing out and bowing up. So that has solved absolutely nothing. So that's a real pain in the ass. Not sure what we've done there, but yeah, that's clearly not worked. Right, so I have spent a number of hours going through all of my sheets of laser paper, and I've come to the conclusion that you might not be able to do this calibration, and you actually might not need to have to anyway. I'll show you what I've found, and then I'll show you how I've solved my problem. And it's basically going back. The solution was to go back to the original software that I uploaded to Mediafire, delete everything, and then start from scratch. You know, setting the language and everything else. This is a square I've just printed out, and sorry about the lights, but I've measured it. It's absolutely perfect. It is a 70mm square. The most important measurements really are the diagonal ones. If the diagonal ones are the same, then you've got a square. And they are. However, if I then go straight into the calibration, Galvo calibration setting here, and I click on mark the 9-point rectangle, which is what you're then supposed to use to calibrate everything with, you can see that I've got these bowed lines. Now that's a little bit bigger than that one, but not much. So it hasn't gone tits up from that size to that size. So there is something very weird about this software and the way this machine has been set up. I wonder whether this has been set up in the machine at the factory, and really this Galvo correction option should never have been available to us in the software. I don't really understand why we've got CCAD, Mr. CAD, BSL app simple, all doing very slightly different things, and obviously BSL app simple being the only one that works with the M1 Pro. So I just find the whole situation weird, really. I'll show you what I've found out. I had to go back to the original software because this area size kept coming up as 100. I wanted it obviously to be 70 because that is, you know, what the machine is supposed to be able to do. I've not found out where that setting is stored, and I've been going through config files all afternoon. I don't know why we have a verification figure of 50 that can be changed, but if we, let me just go on to the back of this. I hadn't done this yet, but I'm going to print a verification graphic and see what that does. So exactly as it was when we first started this nonsense, we have the missing corners, we've got the curved edges, just looking at the ones nearer, sorry, so even the ones nearer the correct size are still bowed. So I think we've been led up the garden path with this Galvo correction option. So I have entered all of the figures, and if you want to try it, although there's really no point, it will save a file called c.cor, and let me show you the file tree. So if we go into BS App Simple, and if you scroll down, it will, sorry, I haven't saved it, sorry, I've saved it to my desktop, but it will be a c.core file, and if I go into that and have a look at it with Notepad, you'll see a number of interesting options. So hopefully you can see this. So it's all sorts of parameters, and that is where everything has been stored. These are all my figures that I entered. So the ones on the left here are the expected values, the ones on the right are the values that I actually got. So obviously in an ideal world it's 70 square, so you're going to get 35, and I've got 31.08 and 31.59 and so on. So that's clearly saved as a you know, as the correct file. You would then let me do it, let me cut and paste that into the folder. So it would just be stored somewhere in here, and just right click and paste that back in, and there you can see it. It saved it as a core file, and leave it as being called C. Now if we run BSL app simple again, and go into the Galvo correction, it's not been read, so that's fine. And what you need to do is go down into the files and go to where are we? Config. No, that's not right. Wait a minute. Let me find it. Plug. I guess plugins. But if you go into the plug folder, you've got this mark CFG0. If you double click on that and open it as a notepad file, and we get back over here, we have a whole load of stuff come up. Now if you scroll right the way down, just trying to make sure the camera's held steady as I do this. Now you see this enable core file, so if you change that to a 1 for yes, and core file, I have tried it with nothing there. I've tried it with the physical folder address. It doesn't seem to make any difference. Okay, so we've got that enable core file set to 1. So we're just going to go up to File and then Save, and we'll close down the program. Let's give it a couple of seconds to close correctly, and then we are just going to open that again. So we'll run the program. Okay, so let me just check everything's correct as far as working area. So, oh, now it's changed to 80, which is obviously incorrect. I've probably changed that in one of those files. But if we go to Galvo correction now, okay, it hasn't found it. Probably got it stored in the wrong place. Yeah, I'm going to have to come back in a second. Okay, so I have given up trying to get this Galvo correction to work because it just doesn't seem that it's necessary. I've gone back to the original software that is on the MediaFire account that everyone can download, and I printed out a 70 by 70 square. In fact, I've done 2 over the top there. That's slightly wonky, but it doesn't matter. The point is, it's printed it out perfectly. 70, I think across the corners is the most important, you know, diagonals, and I think on that it was about 99 on each, so it's a perfect square. But however, if you then go from that, which I've got up on the screen, and you go straight into printing out a 9-point rectangle from the Galvo correction menu, it comes out like this with bowed edges and all sorts of issues. Now I've gone into, earlier this afternoon, I've gone into the settings, I've measured all of the points, I've had them saved as a sea.corc.core file. I've gone into the config. In fact, I'll show you the layout of the files here. So I've basically saved a file that it created. This is the c.core file, and this is all the calibration. These are the settings that I entered. It's basically 1 to 9, but it's labelled 0 to 8. On the left we've got the what the machine thinks are correct, and then we've got the actual values that I measured with the calipers. So that is all there and stored. That is just in the main folder. Now, to get that to be recognised, you might need to do a couple of things, because it certainly isn't recognised instantly. If you go into this plug folder, you'll see a mark CFG0 file. Just open that with Notepad, and there's all sorts of parameters stored in here to do with the Galvo, and if you scroll down, you'll eventually see enable core file, and if you change that to 1, it will then recognise the core file. Now, I've tried putting 1 here, and then where it says core file, and I've also put the full physical address of that file, so c/ you know, whatever it is, big long address there to the folder. But all that happens is, when you run the program again, you know, you've got to restart this for every change that you make pretty much. But once it's restarted and you go to Galvo correction and just run it, all that happens is you get all of the values up here, and it's just not taken into consideration by the machine. So I think having this Galvo correction menu is probably, they probably wish they'd removed it, because I don't think you can correct it within the software, because it's read all of the data and it doesn't apply it when you do that mark verification graphic. You get that ridiculous, what do we used to call them on oscilloscopes, a Lissajou pattern, where you can get pretty patterns displayed on an oscilloscope. I'll have to look that up. I'm sure it was something like Lissajou, French word. So you know that's clearly wrong, and the very fact that we can print a perfect 70 by 70 square now by going back to the original software seems to negate the point of doing any sort of calibration based on what this is showing. So I think that was just a waste of quite a few hours, frankly. I don't know what happened to make the patterns I was doing go wonky. Possibly I tweaked something that I shouldn't have done, but you can see now that we've got a perfectly formed 70 by 70 square that prints absolutely fine. I've also now restrained it to 70 to 70. You can, if you go into the settings, you can make the workspace bigger, but you also need to go into other settings and change that area size to be bigger. So it will print, so it will lase bigger, but I suspect the bigger you get, the more errors are going to be introduced, and the less power is going to get to the edges. I mean, they chose a 70 by 70 grid for a reason. So yeah, I think don't bother with the Galvo correction because I just don't think it's going to work with this machine currently.